Alright guys, well, we're out at a soccer field, and not to play soccer though. I'm going to be going through a compass exercise and trying to show you guys how you can take and go from a known spot, really anywhere. You can start on a trail or whatever and hop into the woods and create a map as you go to identify then where you end up and how to get back to your original spot. So I'm going to take you through a couple of different steps on a series of videos here. We're going to start in a wide open field, and you can scale this to, you know, whatever you have available, and we're going to go through a couple steps of going through an exercise in the field and then transferring that onto a map through a couple of points, and then you know, later on then we'll be doing the same thing in the woods, and eventually we'll end up with this is where you can you know, start at an old point on the map, transfer your data onto a regular map, and use it that way. But we're going to kind of take things one step at a time, and we'll go from there. So Marty and I are kind of working together to create some, you know, some compass series, and he kind of showed you some of the compasses he had. These are some of mine. This is a Brunton Pocket Transit, and this is what we use for creating field topographic maps. These are very accurate. They have clinometers built in, and they're pretty robust. This is kind of a typical military style compass, and it still does have an adjustable bezel. It's got a doghouse. So, you know, it's not quite as easy to use as, you know, a regular map compass with a base plate, but what this can do really well, let me see if I can get this in here, is it has a sighting system, so you can take a bearing and read both your bearing and then the reverse course right off of that sight. The final one, and the one I'm going to use today, is a Silver Ranger, and this is a very, very good compass for making field maps, because you can use it essentially as a protractor as well. You can also sight, you know, take a sight with it. So I'm going to go through this exercise with you guys, and again, this is something you guys can scale to whatever you have available. In terms of materials, you'll need a compass, and you'll need to count your paces. Now, I use a counter, so what I do is every time my left foot hits the ground, you hit the button, and it just ticks off, and that helps, you know, keep you from losing your count. For the type of map that we're going to do today, you don't need to worry about the length of your pace. As long as it all averages out, you're going to be good. There will be some error, but there is anytime you make a map, so that's fine. So we'll get things rolling. Alright, Rasmus, I decided I am going to use the same compass that I sent you. So try and do this so you can see. The first thing we're going to do, set our first run at 360 degrees. So we got the red line marked up, and you can see what we're going to do is, gotta get my counter here. Is we're gonna start on at the blue drum. We want the compass. We want it, get the bubble in the middle. That ensures that the compass is free floating. And we want to line up the doghouse. Okay. So what we're going to do in this case is we're actually going to take a bearing. So we got something to. We're going to take a bearing so we got something to look for down here. So I'm going to look through this and look for 360. And so I appear to be lining up with the corner of that fence down there. So I'm going to head in that direction and count off 100 left foot hits. Alright, I've traveled 100 paces at 360 degrees. Now, it would be a good idea to check your back bearing, so 180. But in this case, we're just going to keep on going. Alright, so we've got our doghouse, we got our compass level. We're in generally the right direction. So now we're gonna get an exact reading. I have to keep this camcorder away. And this time I'm aiming for that porch. So got to count off another 100 paces and see where we end up. Alright, so we just completed our second leg. Came from back there. And we're going to be heading that way, 240 degrees. Now, let's just imagine for a minute that this was just our base camp. So we came in here, we set up camp, and we're like, oh, I don't want to go back through all these zigzags. I just want to know what's the direct way out. So that is where putting those plots on the map, we'd be able to plot a direct course out. And I'm going to show you that once we get back. Alright, just got back. And that's my pace count. And you can see we are off by 4 double steps. So there's a pretty good mud hole out there, and I had to do a little dodging. But still, there is error. And anytime you do this, there will be some error. Alright, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to kind of keep this all in frame as I go. Normally, when you're out, you know, you're dealing at best with a map that's like this. And this is a 1 to 24,000. Just get my pencil here. So up north, the property that we have is an 80-acre lot, and that's it right there. This box is 1 mile on a side. So you can see that normally, you know, if you're just hopping off a trail and going into an area, you're not going to see a lot of detail on a map, and 1 to 24,000 is typically your finest level of detail that's commercially available. So you're not going to be able to, you know, see a lot of the land features. You can tell generally where you're going. If you're going cross country, it's a whole nother story. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a small scale map that we're going to create. Now we could add this into this map later if we have, as long as we have a known point. But for right now, we're not even going to worry about that. We're just going to take and create our own map. So from our exercise, we want to establish here that north is up, and that's going to always be easiest for you. From the exercise we did, we have 3 points. Leg 1, 2, and 3. And we have a distance and a direction. And that's what we need to make a map. So in each case, the distance is 100 paces. The direction initially was 360. And then we had a direction of 120. And finally 240. So with that, we can chart what we did. And normally, you know, you would be doing this, and I'm just checking to make sure this is in frame. Not really. Great. Hopefully you guys are going to be able to see this. So normally, you'd have a smaller notebook. But what we're going to do is we're going to spin the dial up to our initial reading, in this case 360. And we're going to create a start point. So here's the blue garbage can. This is where we started. This could be where you started on a road or weighing off the trail. This is going to be relative, so it doesn't really matter. So these lines in here, we want to line up. In this case I have graph paper. My field journals are usually graph paper. So I want to get that lined up. And what we're going to do is just draw a line up. Okay? We're going to use a ruler to extend that line. We want to be very careful here to do it as accurately as possible. And then this is a scaled rule, and I recommend that you use these. It's an engineer's rule. We have different gradations. And so what we're going to do is that each 10 paces is equal to 1. So we hit 100 paces, it's going to be 10. Measure that out and indicate our point on the piece of paper here. This is our first leg. Okay, leg 2. We're going to spin this to 120. And again, we want to be as accurate as possible. Okay, red arrow up on the faceplate. So your doghouse is pointing up. We want to be as accurate as possible. We draw our line. We're going to extend that. Now, again, be careful here because, you know, any error you introduced gets magnified. So, find the right scale. I'm using a 20 scale. It's not going to work, but you'll just, hopefully you can kind of see what's going on here. Again, we're going to go to 10 and mark our location. This is leg 2. Now, in the next video, what I'll be doing is we'll be zigzagging across an area. We're going to create a map like this, and then we're going to use our endpoint and create a bearing back to our original position. And we can do that here kind of experimentally. We already know what that final bearing is supposed to be, but let's just pretend that we don't know it. So, to find out the shortcut back, we would draw a line between our destination area here and our home. We would put the compass in direction of travel, spin the base plate, and I gotta make sure this is going to be good here so that we get it straight up and down. So the doghouse is pointing north, and we're going to read off what our direction home would be, 240, just like it should. So what you've done is very quickly, albeit with just a couple of points, is to create a map and be able to determine the distance off of the ruler, because we can just measure this. Oh, look, it's 100 paces, just like it should be. So we have a distance of 100 paces and a direction, 240 degrees. And that would be the way home. So, like I said, in the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to go out and we're going to zigzag around a little bit, transfer that onto a map, and then use that final point to create a distance and direction home. But the first thing you know, because this is a very stepwise process. First things first. First thing is for you guys to go out and just do this exercise, and you know, be as precise as possible. And you know, when you feel comfortable with that, then move on to the next step. And we're going to do these as a series of videos so that you can kind of take each one piece at a time. And you know, like I said, we're starting, you know, out in the open here, and we're going to take this to the woods. So do this stepwise. Start where it's easy. We'll move to each step being a little bit harder. So, you know, we've taken and run a course. We threw it on a map, and you know, seen how we can use it. Now in the next video, I'm going to go into a little bit different kind of park. We're going to do some zigzagging, and then we're going to plot a course back to our hypothetical start point and see how we do. But first, you know, first things first. You want to take things one step at a time with this. This is the exact same way in my, you know, geology courses that we started out, and you know, we end up in the end, you know, we have to be able to make topographic maps in the field. So one step at a time, you know, go out, try it, learn it, scale it, and then move on to the next step. So please comment, and you know, if you have questions or if I rushed over something too quickly, let me know, and we'll try and address it in the next video. Thanks.